Okay, so just a short little video here showing you a little bit about the formation of an image. We know that light's going to pass through the cornea, pass through the aqueous humor, through the pupil, and then eventually encounter the lens, and the lens will focus it back on the retina. And those images are inverted and flipped, just like we saw in a microscope. So what we're going to talk about later is the idea that the occipital lobe has to reinvert those and reflip them and get them back into the correct orientation. So another place where the brain takes the raw information and converts it and figures out exactly what the correct orientation should be. The iris diameter, though, that is allowing in a certain amount of light is controlled by two sets of muscles. One is a constrictor set of muscles, smooth muscle, that forms a circle around the pupil and is responsive to parasympathetic stimulation. The other is really associated with a set of epithelial cells, weirdly enough, and this is how the pupil dilates, and sympathetic stimulation will cause this dilation to occur of the pupils. So pupil constriction dilation is going to change when light intensity changes. If we move our eyeballs, we're going to accommodate that for the change in focusing. We'll shift our pupillary opening. And so in response to light, it's called photopupillary reflex. It's automatic. We don't worry about it. And the neat thing here is that when a reflex happens in one eye, it happens in the other automatically. So it's handled at a position in the spinal cord where the brain, you don't split the process into two parts. You keep it as one and you form the same constriction dilation parameters for both pupils at the same time. So this person's eye is very wide. I've never really seen a pupil that gigantic, but the other one's doing the same exact thing. That's what we mean by that previous slide. So what happens here is the dilators are contracting. In this particular case, as we begin forming a much smaller pupil, then we'll see the constrictor muscles will begin operating and forming a much smaller opening. Okay, so a little bit about refraction. Again, I don't want to get into too many gory details here, but light that doesn't pass through the center of the cornea has to have its direction changed so that we can form a picture here, and that little dip is the fovea in the retina. It's not quite that pronounced, but it's there for emphasis, and so that we can form a very sharp image. So anything that's off center of the cornea needs to be refracted or have its direction changed. The aqueous humor and lens don't really do this. The lens will help focus the light a little better, but they don't really alter the path of the light too much. That's the cornea. And so the cornea refracts light, and the lens fine-tunes the image. The lens will become rounder to increase refraction for near vision. So while it has a much less effect, again, it's a fine-tuned type of effect for the amount of refraction. There's a so-called near response that's also known as emmetropia. This is when the eye is relaxed and focused on an object that's more than 20 feet away. So the eye is very relaxed, and so light rays that are coming in from something you're looking at beyond 20 feet are very nearly parallel. And so there's really not an effort to focus too much, but when you move that object closer and closer, the process is going to change quite a bit, and we have to make more of an effort. So it requires three things to happen. We have to have the eyes converge, so the two eyes will slowly approach the middle, right, or at least point towards the middle. The pupil will begin to constrict to block the peripheral light rays, and then you'll get accommodation. This is the big deal here about objects changing position and getting closer and closer. And so you'll change the curvature of the lens so you can focus more clearly on nearby objects, and the muscle will contract, and the lens then, in response to the contraction, will actually fatten, will actually become wider. And that's what means by convex shape, so that we can refract the light more specifically into the retina. So the closest an object can be and still be in focus is called the near point of vision. So the near response, right, we're far away, we're able to take in these parallel light rays. But when we're looking, say reading a book, looking at an object much closer than 20 feet, our eyeballs will turn and converge, and our pupils will constrict, and we'll see the lens fatten up as shown here. It'd be nice if they had more of a difference between the shapes of the lens, but it'll be fatter here, thinner here. Okay, so the near response for distant vision, as I just pointed out, the ciliary muscles are relaxed, which makes the ligaments that hang to the lens much tighter, and it flattens out the lens. Whereas in the other aspect, the muscles will contract, which means they'll kind of bulge up, which means the ligaments will be loose then, and the lens will fatten or become thicker as a response. Okay, so there's all kinds of ways to look at this. Farsightedness, right? This is what you ideally want. But if you are farsighted, then what you're doing is you're focusing on a plane beyond the retina. That's not as common as nearsightedness, myopia, right? Again, this is what you want. This is the normal. But what we're going to see here is that we have focusing occurring prior to the retina. So you have to add a concave lens in order to get it to refract correctly onto that point. And the same over here, you have to have a convex lens in order to get these light rays to correctly refract onto the fovea of the retina.